Hello and welcome to Selling in a Skirt with Judy Hoberman. I'm Judy. For those of you that have been with us before, welcome back. And for those of you that are brand spanking new, welcome. We're so excited to have you. Selling in a Skirt is about connection, community, and creating amazing relationships. We empower professional women and we encourage men to sponsor, advocate, and champion for and with women. So, you know my favorite part of this is having these amazing women and men that I get to share with you, and today is definitely no different. Today I have someone who is not only someone that I admire, somebody that I look up to, someone who we have traded spaces on stages, all this great stuff, and we become friends. So I'm going to introduce you to Sheryl Adkins-Green, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then I'm going to let her tell you. So let me just read just a bit. So let's see. She's a distinguished business executive with over 3 decades of transformative leadership experience across the globe. She's known for her consistent track record of delivering results and developing leaders. She's known for her passion for connecting ideas, people, and talents to create value. In her former role as Mary Kay's Chief Experience Officer, Sheryl supported the success of millions of women. That's with an M, millions of women. And they were entrepreneurs, and she led them through a global strategy that delivered a 360-degree integrated customer experience. Let me just say, Sheryl is a powerhouse. There is nothing that you wouldn't love about her. And I'm telling you, the very first time I met her, I was starstruck because I wanted to meet her so badly. And just by coincidence, I met somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. And that's how the introduction came. And I am thrilled, and it's been years, so welcome, Sheryl.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you for that warm introduction.
I know, it's a little crazy, but really, I'm like, I get like a celebrity crush.
Oh my gosh.
It's for real. You do so many things for so many women, and that, is part of my life. So tell us really like who you are, what you do, and what you love about what you do.
So who am I? Beyond being a business executive, I'm a mom. I'm a mentor. I consider myself a servant of the community, and I've been inspired by so many wonderful people, so many impactful women in the past, and always felt like I can't wait to pay that forward. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think so much as what I've had to do, but what I got to do, what I get to do every day.
Love that. Because a lot of times people say, well, I work here and here's what I do and whatever. And that's never been your style anyway, because even when you walk into, the Mary Kay experience with, thousands and thousands of women that show up in Dallas, you just walk in like, these are my friends, these are my people, and that to me is more than anything. And I just love that. But I know there's always a backstory.
Yes.
So tell me about your backstory. How did you decide to do what you do? And I know you've been with lots of different major companies, but how did you decide that that was the right role for you to take at that moment in your life?
Well, my background actually started in sales and selling in a boutique, selling on commission. Ooh. So it's a role that definitely required me to connect with people and make a connection quickly, which was something I loved to do. In fact, if I hadn't studied retailing undergrad, probably would have been psychology, because the whole notion of consumers totally. And helping consumers achieve their goals. So I never thought about selling merchandise. It was really, how do I connect with someone and help them understand their goal, help them achieve a goal. So throughout my career, which evolved from an undergraduate degree, fashion retailing, into consumer packaged goods, and then into financial services, and ultimately the beauty category, the consistent theme, so to speak, is how can I take my ideas, the resources, the creativity, and bring that together to create value. And in my career, there's been a consumer at the end of that value proposition.
Interesting. So when you were working with millions of women, because we have to go back to that, because that's, a lot of women, and you inspire, you have impact, and you really love what you do. Why is it that not all women feel that the relationship piece is the first piece? Because it's never really about the sale. It doesn't matter what you're selling. But why isn't it that we don't always face that relationship first? Because once you have the relationship, it's all over.
Exactly. I'm going to express just my point of view.
Yeah, well, you have to.
But I don't know if in general in business, and, have an MBA, worked in a variety of industries and so forth. I feel like relationships in broad strokes have been undervalued because they're not as easy to measure. It's always easier to measure the dollars and the cents and the transactions. There aren't really established metrics for relationships. So, fast forward, as more and more companies are looking to build loyalty, to create truly brand ambassadors, they come to find out that you have to have that element, that component of relationship, whether it's on a large scale or whether it's one-to-one in the way that the Mary Kay independent beauty consultants have those one-on-one relationships with their customers. So I think more and more companies are starting to recognize this is an opportunity. I will also say I don't think technology can get them there, but technology can create more efficiency so it frees up time for relationship understanding and relationship development.
And opportunities.
Of course.
So here's an interesting thing that I just thought of as you were saying that. Many years ago when I was going into this corporate space, somebody mentioned that businesses, you have to be having a relationship with the business, and businesses don't have relationships, people do.
Exactly.
And so one of the things that they were saying is, like, why do you really believe that a relationship is important? Now, I don't love whiteboards, but they gave me a whiteboard, and I thought, oh my God, this is not going to be good. But it was good, because I specifically was thinking of this one company, and I said, the CEO of the company asked the CXO why they were dealing with me. Now I'm sitting there, right? And so she said to me, we'll go up to the whiteboard. And she said to me, write down this name. I wrote down the name. She said, write down this name. I wrote down the name. I'm not sure why I was writing, but she kept giving me names and write down the names. And she said, now draw lines underneath it. So she looked at the CEO and she said, do you know what we all have in common with this? And he said, no. And then she said, write your name here. And he said, our biggest customer all came from you? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, case closed. And so I'll never forget that, because it was the weirdest feeling, but then it was so real. Mm-hmm. And so then he said, I should really start working on relationships. And so that was the end of that. But today we're actually going to talk about change. And change is something that, it's a big concept that we have to tackle. But it's also something that is constant. And people deal with it in many different ways. Change, a lot of times, has a negative connotation to it, but it also can be exciting. So my question to you is, why does change seem to be so challenging when in reality it's really an opportunity for growth?
I think the reason why that is the case really does come back to mindset. Mm-hmm. And I think for many, and it's certainly understandable, change seems to connote chaos. In other words, things are moving, not sure where they're going, not sure what, why, how am I going to fare? And for me, the goal is to go from that feeling of chaos to a feeling of confidence. Mm. And that thought process is a mindset. And I think it's something that I've learned over time, and it's helped me embrace and leverage change. And I feel like now more than ever, to your point, change is constant. And a lot of change we can't control. We can control, though, how we adapt and respond to change.
So we had the biggest change ever a few years ago with a global pandemic. I mean, nobody was prepared for it. You couldn't be prepared for it because it never happened like that before. It was the biggest change that there was. And from that became, resiliency was, a factor and things like that. Mm-hmm. But what would you say to somebody that was facing an unexpected change? It doesn't have to be as dramatic as a pandemic, sure, but an unexpected change that's going to make their life different. And it could be good or bad. But what do you say to somebody? And I know it's mindset, but when you tell somebody, it's mindset, don't worry about it. Yeah, they're going like, okay, fine. Okay, I'll just turn my head around,
And it's certainly never to imply that change is always easy.
Yeah.
And some changes are truly life-changing. I'm happy you brought up the pandemic, because I was thinking about that on the way to our conversation this morning. I feel that because we all in large part made it through the pandemic, there's really a lot to gain confidence from. And we have proof that we can adapt. We have proof that we can learn and do things in different ways. So I think that experience is a source of confidence. I think on some levels we maybe don't want to remember the pandemic, but let's remember there were things we learned about ourselves, we learned about others close to us. Again, we learned that we are certainly more capable than we maybe had imagined. For so many who thought, I'm really not into digital social media,
Right.
well,
It's not
24
gonna work.
hours later, they were on the case, figuring it out.
Yep. Well, and a lot of industries said we could not do things virtually because that's just not how we do it. And even something like, a Mary Kay representative who is this all the time really had to change the way that they did business. And I know that, I know a lot of Mary Kay people, and they were all calling. They were calling and
Exactly.
saying, hey, can we just set up a virtual coffee?
Yeah, let's keep in touch.
Because otherwise, we all felt so
Isolated.
isolated. We were starving for connection, and it really showed us what we're made of.
Yes.
So in that case, the change that was so terribly drastic turned out to be almost like like the rainbow in the sky. Like, oh, I can do this, and
Yeah.
I could do it this way, and I could do it this way.
And when you understand your why, when you're connected to your why, you will discover a how. So you mentioned independent beauty consultants. Their why was they really wanted to be of service and support their customers and others in their community. So they had a very powerful why, and the circumstances didn't change the why, they changed the how.
Yeah. And sometimes the how, it's even like when you sit through a course online, they're always telling you why you need to do this, but they never tell you how. Let's just talk about the how for a minute, because you know the why, but just give us some examples of that. And, and that's a perfect example. They had to figure out, they picked up the phone, they scheduled virtual meetings. There was no more in-home parties because you couldn't do it. So did the numbers change drastically during the pandemic?
While I can't speak in any specifics,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can say that anecdotally, so many independent beauty consultants said they had some of their best years
Right.
ever because they were able to extend and expand their network. It was because they got to know people in a different level and discover more. And again, that's part of deepening a relationship. The more you learn about someone, the better you can support their goals. So that was a silver lining, so to speak.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I remember, my height of my sales days when we were meeting for the first time, and I was, taking notes, and you would say something, and that was like so not even on target for what we were talking about, but I knew it was important to you, and I'm writing things down. And in a casual conversation, I might have said, so, Sheryl, you told me that you love to cook and you wanted to travel across Europe and blah, 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 blah. Tell me about have you ever done that? And then in my mind, I'm saying, okay, I have to find an article because I need to send you one. And so I already have all these things built up, and our relationship starts. So, that's the important part. But with that said, we always know that, change is inevitable.
Yes.
What happens after is different. It's the growth that's optional. So how do you take that change and decide what you're going to do with it? Because growth is something that is going to happen. It's going to happen. You have to decide how you're going to embrace that. Because there's many people, when I left my corporate position, the change, it was there.
Yeah.
But now what do I do? So you have to sit yourself down and have a conversation. So tell me about what your thoughts are about why do people, well, in your case, I know that you've made major changes, but, the growth is optional.
Yeah, I think it's understandable that when we're confronted with change, there's the side of us that feels a loss of control. And when you feel a loss of control, you start to think about, what am I losing? What am I giving up? What can't I do? Now, these things may be real. They may be, anticipatory. But if you approach change with that limiting mindset, it will be self-fulfilling. And you and I have talked
Absolutely.
about what we
Yes.
think about comes about. So to think about change as opening and expanding possibilities all of a sudden helps that individual, and something I've learned personally. All of a sudden you start to see more. You start to think about, well, ideally, what would I like from change? We always think like, oh, I wish something were different, or I had more of this, less of that. Well, maybe that's now possible with change. So the shift in focus is to not worry about what you may be losing, but to think about what could I gain? What would I like to gain? And as things are in motion, it also means there's room, there's space to impact what you may want to gain out of the forthcoming change.
So do you believe that it's really the challenge is because it's the unknown?
It's the unknown, and when things are unknown, you aren't sure how you're going to continue to be successful, let alone be even more successful. Mm-hmm. So there are things that are unknown, but there's always things that we know. Mm-hmm. There's things we know about ourselves. We know what we're good at. We know how we have not only survived, but thrived through change in the past. We also know we have resources around us. And so thinking about, where and how will my community be of support and be a resource to me through a change or a transition.
Okay, so you personally have gone through major changes. What are some practical steps that you've taken going through this, and what would you suggest for women that are actually going through transition stages right this moment? Because there's change everywhere, every day. And if you look at them as opportunities, it's one thing. If you look at them as, oh my God, what am I supposed to do next? It's another thing. So what are some practical steps, and what have you done? And have you embraced your change?
Yes, I am definitely embracing my change, that being my transition from full-time at Mary Kay, now being retired from Mary Kay and able to devote full-time attention to my many professional and personal interests. So I think about this transition not as much as an ending, but actually an opportunity to perhaps scale all the things I loved about my professional career, all the things I loved about the global community of women entrepreneurs. So the mindset is now I have more flexibility to take my experience and skills and creativity and ideally scale that. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I know that as I have these new opportunities to connect with more people, to continue to learn about new and exciting opportunities to make an impact, and importantly, inspire others to make an impact, that for me is exciting.
So it really is more of a continuation of what you're doing,
yes,
but the environment is different.
Exactly.
Okay, so I always tell people when they say to me, I'm so afraid of what's going to happen, I don't understand, I'm like this, I have this, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so really what you're saying is it's unknown to you. Yes. Okay, so here's my theory.
Okay.
When you have to step out of your comfort zone into the unknown, do it. Get a little comfortable there, because that becomes your new.
You've expanded your zone.
Right. So this is no longer unknown, but don't get comfortable, because you're going to do it again. And then you're going to do it again. And when you think about it that way, okay, so I'm going to step out. I'll be a little uncomfortable like anything else, but it's okay, because now I'm learning something. You might learn something that you love. You might learn something that you'll never do again. But at least you've taken the experience as opposed to regretting it later on.
For sure.
So what are some of the, let's pretend there's a woman who's talking to us right this moment, and she is very nervous about what's in front of her because she has no idea. She's got a new position, she has a new whatever. What would you say, other than just, let's change your mindset because we're going to do that. But really, what are some of the things that they can do to really make it easier? And I don't know if easy is the right word, but make it more appealing, maybe.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. One is to walk away from a mindset of fear. Mm-hmm. And the acronym I like to use for fear is feeling excited and ready.
Ooh, I love that.
And that came to me because I thought sometimes when we're feeling nervous or insecure, it's not necessarily that different than the adrenaline when something exciting and great is about to happen. So I thought to myself, maybe times when I, quote, felt fear, maybe that's the adrenaline. And let me lean into that from a positive mindset and let that be the adrenaline that drives me. I do think many of us don't take enough time to really inventory our accomplishments and take stock of what we've done, who we know, what we're good at doing, and where we are, where we have enjoyed success, where we know our sweet spot is. So I think in the context of what's unknown, coming back to what do we know about ourselves?
Right.
And sometimes it's these conversations, and it's not wrong at all to get feedback from that personal advisory board of, when you think of me and what are the 3 words that come to mind? And when we've had these types of conversations, I think we all say, wow, I didn't know that so-and-so thought so highly of me, or I didn't know they really respected my ability. So I think part of taking control of your outlook is to look inside and look at all that you bring to what's next.
I love that. And with that, one of the things I do is every time I get a testimonial or somebody sends me a video or sends me an audio or writes whatever, I have a folder on my computer. And so when I'm feeling like one of those days where nothing's going right or why am I doing this, I open up the folder and I click on any of them. And I only have to watch the beginning of it or listen to the beginning of it or read the beginning of it. And then I go, yeah, that's why I do what I do. And I'm fine. But sometimes, like you said, you forget all the things that you are good at or people respect you or the 3 words, because I use that all the time. And you forget that. But sometimes that's all you need is that little bit of a shove.
Yes. And the other thing that I've learned, and I think it's always important to let people know what you like and appreciate and respect about them. I've noticed that when you do that, it often comes back to you in some form or fashion that's affirming. And it's not the reason why I give a compliment or make a recommendation. But as human beings,
right.
I think we want to express how we feel about others. We're not maybe always sure exactly when and what words. So if you take the initiative and reach out and say, hey, I like what you said. I like how you did that. I think you're doing a great job. It's amazing how much of that positive energy comes right back to you organically.
Right. And it's a wonderful feeling. And then you think, okay, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the bigger picture. What about the organizations? What can they do? Because a lot of them are going through major changes, whether it's somebody is coming in that's new at the top or whatever it is. How can an organization foster growth, create an environment that encourage growth when people are nervous? What can they do from the top? Because that's where it starts anyway.
Yeah, and certainly, we look at the headlines and so many companies are going through, and institutions
Yes.
are going through
Yes.
a lot of significant changes. I think what leaders need to do first and foremost is acknowledge not only that it's uncomfortable for the organization, but the why. And the why is that the organization is not feeling confident that they can contribute their best, because they're just not sure. So I think when organizations take the time to not only provide context, but to help the organization understand what it will take, what is needed for success, for the enterprise to be successful going forward, and how the organization needs to potentially pivot, focus, whatever, to help the organization be more successful going forward. And part of that is providing some context, and I call it, what's the case for change? Sometimes the change comes and it's in the form of a memo or a video, etc. You want to if you understand, again, the why, then it helps. It doesn't take away all of the concerns,
Right.
but it helps. And most importantly, having the opportunity to understand, where's this change taking us? Because if I understand that where the change is taking us and what the at least aspirational benefits of the change, okay, now I have something to look forward to. Now I know how I can contribute.
Yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes when they just send you this memo, yes, we're going to be doing this, and you're thinking, where do I, like is something happening to our position here or whatever. You're right. They have to give the why. They have to give some kind of context. But that's great advice, and I'm hoping that people are actually listening to that, Okay, so you know that my business is 99% female. I do, like I said, I encourage men to, be champions of women. But as a female, as you go up the ladder, I call it the lonely leader. And the reason I say that is because, number one, you have no idea who has an agenda or who doesn't. Who can you trust? Who can you share your ideas with? And who isn't going to just not be there for you? So as you go higher and higher, it happens. So what can women do that are excelling in their careers and doing everything possible for their teams, and yet they still feel so alone? What do you suggest for them to feel more comfortable, or to have somebody that's going to be on their side? And but some, like you had a person that we all need a caller. I'm just saying. We all do. She has been, for me, she made everything easy, but she also was very loyal.
Yes.
And that's also hard.
Yes. So I think in terms of, I'll start with the beginning of what you said, the things, quote, we worry about. And one of my favorite quotes about worrying is that it's kind of like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere.
I love that.
So I can't say I never worry, but when I find myself worrying, I find that, okay, worrying isn't going to get me anywhere. So how do I take that mental energy and put it towards something I know I can do well, something I know that will make a difference? I think as it relates to, and I was fortunate in my time with Mary Kay, because there are a lot of awesome women there. So I know a lot of women executives don't have that kind of the benefit of a community. But I will say that increasingly there are many organizations, many companies are supportive of facilitating networking opportunities. So here I'd say the advice is take the time to develop and nurture your network, whether it's girlfriend, it could be your college network, your professional network, your church network, it doesn't matter. And I'm guilty a lot of times, I wasn't taking time to go out for a lunch or a coffee. But every time I did invest the time, just like when you and I would just say, Sheryl,
it's time.
Judy, we got to schedule this, is so worth it. So that would be, it sounds simple, but it's a mindset. And for me, I actually started blocking 2 hours on Friday morning. I had a conference call booked for like 12 years. And it was my space on a Friday morning to make sure that whether it was coffee or email or
whatever
correspondence, a thank you note, I was intentional, and I made that part of my permanent schedule. And I would say the time was there for me, and I used it. And I would recommend that to anybody and everybody. If you can't block 2 hours, block an hour. And if you can't block an hour, block 30 minutes.
Something. Just start somewhere. And it's so funny to me because sometimes women will say to me, I blocked out time and I took it off my calendar, but people just put themselves on my calendar. I said,
like,
no,
no,
you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. So what would be your number one piece of advice for a woman in leadership positions that is just, they want to do better. They want to be more, do more, love their people, but love what they do. What's their number one piece of advice as a leader?
My first advice will be, don't assume you're not doing enough, because you probably are, and you may even be doing more than enough. But we all have that feeling, and I think it's not necessarily because others expect more of us, it's because we expect more of ourselves. And of course, we're our harshest critics, and we're the ones that know the most about our potential. I think what will help is to take that desire to do more and try your best to refine it to something specific. Because saying I want to do more, do better is like, how do I boil an ocean?
Right.
As opposed to, I want to be more impactful, where and how and with whom. Is there perhaps a person I want to mentor? Is there a project or initiative, either within the company or externally, and I'd like to be the key resource to help that make a significant and sustainable advancement. So I think when, just like in our work, when we can be more specific about the goal, then we feel more empowered. Oh, that's the goal, like Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind.
Right.
But I think when we're just walking around with this, I have to do more, I have to do better, it's too much because it's too vague.
And it's much harder when you have no idea what you're doing. It's like the SMART goals. You know, you have to be specific and measurable. But I remember, when I first started my company, I think I was in it for a year, and my son said to me, what's your goal for next year? And I said, I'd like to bring in more revenue than I did this year. And he said, oh, really? So if you brought in $1 more, you met your goal. And I thought, okay, we have just swapped positions here. Right, so you're right. You absolutely be more specific, show ways that you can measure it, and Okay, so you personally,
yes,
what are you the most excited about for the rest of 2024 and going into 2025? Like, what do you still want to accomplish?
I am most excited about expanding my network. I love connecting with people. I love helping people connect. And I truly believe that it's through expanding connections and deepening relationships that I will develop the clarity around where my energy and experience is going to be best directed. So, for literally decades, I knew what I needed to do. I knew what I wanted to do. I am really excited about creating and protecting some space for myself to see what is really ahead for me.
Is there travel involved in it?
Yes.
I know.
Yes. Actually, the travel is domestic, doing some things both professional as well as I have a passion for art. And I think I'm involved and active in the Dallas Museum of Art and the arts community. So I'm definitely have some art trips already scheduled.
I knew that, so we have to get on the calendar
Yes.
very soon, because otherwise it is booked up. Okay, so I know that people are going to want to connect with you. What's the best way for our listeners to get to know you better and connect with you?
I would probably say LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn I strive to share my perspectives on professional development, on organizations making an impact. I will share that for LinkedIn, I really do value my connections, and so I make it a point to connect with people that I've had a chance to get to know, but I'm always happy to interact through the LinkedIn network.
I totally get it. Like, just read right between the lines, because and it's true. I remember accepting somebody's invitation to connect, and within 2 seconds, he was in my message saying, I am going to create a website that you are proud of for you. And I thought, I don't know you. Who said I wasn't proud of my website? And you haven't even taken me to dinner yet. He didn't get that part. But you know what I mean? It just doesn't it doesn't make sense. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, Sheryl, thank you so much. I know you're, in the middle of doing all kinds of traveling and, creating things. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me today.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to hearing all the great things that are going to be happening as soon as you peel back the onion a little.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you for being with us today on Selling the Skirt with Judy Hoberman. We're excited to bring you amazing guests all the time. So until next time, we'll see you soon.